Well, here we are live and loud in Boston, Massachusetts, inside Hurricanes at the Garden. It's Extra Rounds, everybody. I'm TJ DeSantis, along with Belal Muhammad, Jason Anik, and Tatiana Suarez, as we are hanging out. Tatiana, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Pretty great. You got to be doing good after a huge win, sort of solidifying yourself, I think, as the #1 contender for this fight coming up here tomorrow night. We got the Strawweight Championship on the line. I assume you're going to be thinking you're getting the winner. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm obviously I have a close eye on it, and I think that
Tatiana, I'm gonna need you to say it with your chest. I got next. That's all that matters right now. Come on.
I mean, you got to call your shot, right?
Yes. I mean, I think that I deserve it, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't make decisions. I just do the fighting.
I'll talk for her. She got next no matter what. I don't care who it is. We're going to smash it.
See, I like this. This is like a pro wrestling relationship. You're her manager right now. You know what I mean? You're like the liaison.
I'm going to walk out with the little urn.
Yeah, exactly.
Undertaker urn.
He's hired.
There you go. You got a gig, Belal. Talk about some inconsistencies as far as being active over the last couple of years. Now you're kind of got a few fights under your belt.
Right.
I assume it feels great to be back in regular fighting.
Yeah, that's what I was saying not too long ago. I was just really excited because I was telling Pat, that I'm just really happy that I'm healthy. I'm able to do it that I love, and that's the most important. And I want the title shot and stuff, but I'm just happy that I could just fight, you know what I mean? And I'm healthy enough to do so, because a healthy Tatiana is a dangerous Tatiana.
There we go. Let's talk a little bit about our co-main event. Obviously, Strawweight Championship of the World is on the line. Zhang Weili defending against Amanda Lemos. While we have you here, break down this fight a little bit for us, Tatiana.
Originally I had kind of thought that maybe Lemos would be able to beat her. But, I think I rewatched some of Lemos' fights and Zhang's as well. And I just think that, Zhang has really good footwork, and she's been working on wrestling a lot. So I expect her to try to grapple a little bit more. And I think that maybe, Lemos is going to kind of fatigue, and I think that Weili will win the later rounds and end up winning the fight.
Is it going to be a decision, you think?
I think both women have the potential to, finish together. But I do think that it'll go to decision, yeah.
All right. What's a timeline for you? Obviously, you want a title fight, but is there a certain time you want to get back in the octagon? I mean, are you healthy after the last fight?
Yeah. The only thing that hurt a little bit was my foot from kicking recklessly. But, I felt great. And, whenever, they want to put me back in there for the title shot, I'm ready.
She's learning, Belal. So we'll put me back in there for the title shot. There you go. You two know each other, right? You guys get a...
She's been on our show multiple times.
Yeah.
Okay, remember the show.
I mean, every Thursday night. I don't want to plug myself, but yeah, remember the show every Thursday night. Me and Jason Anik. But yeah, like I said, her personality comes out on there, right? And I tell her all the time, like, she's so giddy, she's fun, right? But the fans don't see that side of her. And she's a good trash talker. When she wants to talk trash, she talks trash. You just got to talk it to the other strawweights out here to show them what it is. That's your title shot.
Since
there ain't
when
nobody
do
gonna walk
I
through
talk trash?
I don't want to show out the tweets or the texts, but she goes hard.
I go hard, okay. I don't. I think this is him making it up. But
I mean, how much do you think about that? Do you think a lot about your public perception and how you come off to fans?
No, I'm just myself, really.
Okay.
I don't really put too much into that. I think just myself, and if people like me, they like me. If they don't, well, they don't. So. Well,
you're undefeated. There's a lot to like, right?
I guess so.
There we go. All right. Well, Tatiana, I appreciate you stopping by, and best of luck getting this title fight next.
Thank you.
Here she is, Tatiana Suarez, kind enough to join us here on Extra Rounds as we are live here inside the Hurricanes at TD Garden. Again, we're getting ready for a big title fight, 2 title fights coming up on Saturday night. You can go, Tatiana.
Okay,
I don't want to hold you here forever.
Appreciate you, Tati.
Thank you.
You're the best. You're the best. Future champ. They better bring her into the cage after. No, you're...
She talks more after we get her off the headset. There she goes. Tatiana Suarez, kind enough to join us here on Extra Rounds. As I mentioned, we are live in Boston. Boston is your hometown.
Correct.
You and John grew up here.
Proud to be back.
Kicked out of here. You had to go down to Florida.
Exactly. But it's great to be back. I haven't lived here since I was 18. Belal Muhammad has never been in this city before, and I believe you love it so far.
It's been great so far. The fans have been awesome. I didn't get any of the lingo right earlier on the weigh-in show, but I think I need to talk with you more to learn some of these slang to use to these Bostonites.
Can you give me an example? Like, what is something that is historically Boston that I would not know what you're talking about?
Well, on the weigh-in show today, they had a lot of examples of vernacular Boston terms.
Right.
You know, do you know what a grinder is? A grinder?
I would assume like a sandwich.
All right, pretty good.
Like a meatball sandwich?
A packy. Do you know what a
Packy?
packy is? That was the one that we knew. So that's a liquor store, right?
Okay, right.
But, you know, we talked earlier about a rotary. You drive around the rotary, but that's a roundabout. But all this stuff was on UFC weigh-in earlier today. But, and John was doing them. My brother John Anik was giving the terms. But, you know, when you don't say them in a Boston accent, it's a lot different. Like grinder versus grinder, it's a whole different ballgame.
Okay, I don't want to go down the Melbourne, Melbourne route, but like, should I say Boston? Fenway Park?
That's good.
Right? Yeah, but I would never say it's Fenway Park because I'm from Minneapolis. I respect ours, you know? I don't know.
I hear it.
I'm going to Fenway tomorrow, I think.
Are you really?
I have to. When in Rome, right?
Exactly.
But, you know, tomorrow night inside TD Garden. Is this the old Boston Garden? Is it the same building? Is it a new building?
It's a new building. It used to be the Boston Garden. It's TD Garden. No, it's different. They still got the parquet floor, but it is not the old Boston Garden where the locker rooms, the Lakers locker rooms, there's no air conditioning, not those days.
Right, okay. Fair enough. But, you know, I'm curious. We got a pretty exciting title fight coming up. Bantamweight Championship of the World is on the line as Aljamain Sterling defends against the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. You know, we're not too far from New York where the champion calls home. But for whatever reason, Aljamain just can't catch a break when it comes to getting the fans to fall in love with him. I think there's a lot of things to like about the Funk Master. Is that going to play in his mind at all, you think, Belal, if the fans of Boston here are cheering for the Sugar Show more than Aljamain Sterling?
Not really, because I think he's used to it by now.
Right.
I fought with him when he fought in Newark, and he was getting booed there, and I was like, what is going on? But I think it's like the mob mentality nowadays, where the fans see one person do it, they all want to act like they need to do it as well. I was telling the story earlier today where, you know, I'm the same way as Aljamain, where the people are just booing, and some older lady met me at the hotel, and she was like, can I get a picture? And then I talked to her for a second, and she's like, you're such a nice guy. Like, I don't know why I was booing you. I was like, why were you booing me? She was like, everybody around me was booing, so I was just with the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of like the same thing where Aljamain is, where it's the popular thing to hate on a guy.
Right.
But the guy is doing one of the quickest turnarounds for a champion.
It's true.
He's being an active champion. He's fighting the best guys out here, and he's putting on dominant performances. I don't know why. He has nothing to hate on, right? He's doing everything that a champion should be doing. He's active on Twitter. He interacts with fans. He's a fun guy, but I just think it's one of those things that people are going to appreciate him more once he's done.
Yeah, it is interesting because I wonder, you know, what athletes think about their legacy while they're on the journey itself, right? You know, George St. Pierre's a guy who really thought about the legacy and still, to this day, thinks about his legacy. He's coming back doing the Fight Pass Invitational. He considered what a win or loss would do for his legacy in that return. You know, for a guy like Aljamain Sterling, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily legacy, but I do think he thinks about how people perceive him, but I also think that he just doesn't care, which kind of makes it great in a roundabout way.
Yeah, I think it's good to get to the place where you don't care, because I don't necessarily think a lot of things are changing. I mean, when you obtain your title for the first time in that fashion, I feel like that's just never going to get away from him. I feel like that's just what people are chasing, but ultimately I don't really think it matters. I get so sick of people saying that he doesn't have charisma. I think he's super charismatic. Look, there are certain guys like Sean O'Malley that are just electric on the microphone, and every sentence seems to sort of pull you. But to me, Aljamain Sterling, I think this one will be a capstone that will maybe get him that respect he deserves. But in terms of the people that are in the know and the fighters and the fans, he's got his respect.
Yeah, you know, you said capstone. I think we might see the end of a chapter a little bit coming up on Saturday night. And I'm curious, Belal, I'm going to ask you to buy or sell this fact. Is this Aljamain Sterling's final fight at 135 pounds? Because I think it is. Do you buy that it might be the last fight for the Funk Master at Bantamweight?
I buy it. I think, you know, he's huge. I trained with him a couple weeks ago while we were in Nashville at the fights, and I'm like, how do you ever make weight? It's crazy. But, you know, he weighed in earlier this time. I know that playing the factor that you just fought a couple, 6 weeks ago, so
right, yeah.
It was a quick turnaround for him, so you don't get that out of shape or that fat. But I know for a fact that he wants to go up to 145. He hates cutting the weight. He wants to give the division to his best friend and his teammate, Merab, and I think that plays a huge factor in it, knowing that all right, it's time to let him have his time as a champion or fight for the belt. So that's a big thing about him. It's
interesting. You mentioned Merab. Like, the way that the last Aljo fight went down in Newark and Merab stole the jacket of O'Malley, like, I feel like that's the rivalry that everyone really wants. Yes, he obviously got Sterling defending his title, but people, I think, would be just as excited, if not more excited, for those two to duel down the road, Merab and O'Malley.
Yeah, for sure. And especially because Merab is just so funny, right? And he doesn't even, like, really try to be, but like, the stuff that he does is hilarious. And I think it would be an exciting fight because when I look at Aljamain, if he takes O'Malley's back, he's going to hold his back in that position. With Merab, he's going to have to take you down 15 to 16 times in a fight. And O'Malley will have those moments where he could catch him or rock him or drop him or something like that, where we saw with Marlon Moraes, where he rocked him a lot of times earlier in the fight when he fought Merab. So I can see O'Malley wanting that fight because Merab leaves a lot more openings than Aljamain does.
Yeah, getting back to this fight with Sterling and O'Malley, you talked about the timetable of it, and I'm curious a little bit when it comes to the fact that we're looking at O'Malley, who's been not on the shelf, I hate to say on the shelf for 10 months, but he hasn't fought for 10 months where, it hasn't been 10 weeks since we last saw Aljo. Do you think the timeline at all plays a factor in being an advantage for either of these athletes? Because I know Sterling wanted a little more time off, but does it benefit O'Malley to have this, quick turnaround for Aljo?
It just depends on how Aljamain's body is. Having back-to-back 5-round camps is huge. The training camps are where you get most of your injuries. People could look at his fight against Cejudo and be like, well, I didn't see him bleeding or anything like that, but you don't know what the bumps and bruises he got from that camp.
Right.
And for a guy to do back-to-back camps is always hard. And when you're talking about O'Malley, he had 9 months to train for, I think, one specific opponent. You know it was either going to be Cejudo or Aljamain, and they both kind of fight the same way. So those 9 months, we don't know how much better he's gotten, right?
Sure.
A lot of people do get better in those 9 months, and especially him, a guy who takes it serious. A lot of people don't give him credit for it, but when you hear his interviews, when you hear him talking, the guy's intelligent. He knows what to do, what the things are right to do for a professional athlete, and he always says, I train like a champion before I'm a champion, and I like that about him.
TJ DeSantis, Belal Muhammad, Jason Anik live here for Extra Rounds in Boston, Massachusetts as we get ready for UFC 292 tomorrow night. So, of course, you can watch it live on pay-per-view. Going back to that O'Malley and Peter Yan fight, there were a lot of people that thought Peter Yan won the decision and that it was maybe a robbery. I hate using those words because not all robberies are equal. It was a close fight. I think you can make the argument that O'Malley won. You can make the argument that Peter Yan won. But I feel like the idea of O'Malley being a #1 contender now is a lot different than it was, that night back in October of last year. Are you surprised, Jason, that, O'Malley is as much of a fan favorite #1 contender considering his last performance?
It's a great way you broke that down because when it was first announced, it's like, all right, split decision win, there you go, one fight. When my boy over here's won 9 straight, just begging for it, So I think it's interesting, but at the same time, this sport, the star was born very quickly with Snoop Dogg on Contender Series. So
O'Malley!
And ultimately, I think for Sean, getting that split decision win, and when you know how it works in this game, you face the #1 contender, you slot into that slot there. So I think he's worthy right now. To talk about Belal's point in terms of these 9 months, even Chris Weidman talking about he didn't spend 2 years recovering as much as he did spending it getting better.
Right.
So ultimately, I do think we're going to see Sean O'Malley improved. I just don't know if he's going to be able to keep it up, and get up when it goes down.
Yeah, I look at this fight, and, there's that old saying, styles make fights. Like, I'm always going to favor a grappler over a striker in mixed martial arts. I tend to lean that way a lot, with Aljamain Sterling, who's not a slouch on his feet by any means, but he does have a good grappling and wrestling base. O'Malley, a dynamic striker, likes to strike from range. Break this down a little bit for me, Belal. Is this a grappler versus striker matchup, or is this going to be one that plays out of the feet a little bit more than I'm thinking?
I think people are underestimating O'Malley's grappling, but I also think they're underestimating Aljamain's striking. Like, people are saying that if Sean O'Malley lands one strike, Aljo's supposed to just be knocked out.
Right.
It's funny, even kind of like Sean O'Malley saying that, all I got to do is land one shot. Sterling's only been knocked out once, and it was a crazy, perfect timing head kick. But I think that the difference here is O'Malley's very calculated with his striking. He's good at setting traps. I think he's going to sit there. He's been planning this for a whole year now of seeing how Aljamain moves. The thing about Aljamain is, though, he just does wild things. He does things that aren't orthodox. He doesn't just do the normal walk forward, jab, cross, look forward at you. He'll throw a high kick, touch your leg, throw an up kick, and it's like weird stuff, but it works for him. It's the funk style, right? And I think that people don't give him enough credit for that because they'll see it, they'll be like, his striking's sloppy. It's not like a Adesanya. His striking's not good. So you're assuming that Sean could just knock him out. But I'm like, bro, Aljo has great striking. He struck the whole 3 rounds with Pedro Munoz, who's a great striker himself. He's had those moments where he rocked Peter Yan in that fight, too. So, to me, I do think it is striker versus grappler. Obviously, if Aljamain gets your back, anybody in the division, it's going to be a long night for you. I just think it comes down to being patient in those spots for O'Malley. If I get taken down, I'm going to stay in guard. If I have to give up a couple rounds to get to the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round of being on my feet, I have to do it.
You know, I look at these fights, you know, at the highest level, and sometimes rounds are separated by a handful of strikes or even just a scramble. You know, Sterling's a guy that he fights to the level of his competition sometimes, and rounds are sometimes a bit closer than maybe they should be. Do you think that Sterling's going to try to style it all or make a statement and leave no doubt, if you will, or do we see a competitive fight?
Sometimes I do think that Sterling going in there without a plan, honestly. I think that he likes to just go in there and see how he feels that day. And we see random stuff from him, like even in the Peter Yan first fight where he came out so hard in that first round. I was like, what are you doing with all that volume? And then the second fight, you're like, he fought a perfect fight. And I was like, why didn't you just do that the first fight? Because you're so good in those spots.
Right.
So I think for him, it may get personal where he is calling him teacher's pet. He is saying you got Dana White privilege, you don't belong in here, and I want to show you guys, even the fans that are booing him right now, that I am the best. I am the GOAT of the bantamweight division. So I do think that he will come out fast and try to finish him early because it's making a statement. And then he knows the statement will get him that title fight against Volkanovski. If he goes out there, it's a close fight, he ends up winning. Maybe he won't get that next fight against Volkanovski or won't get that big of a hype against that fight. But if he goes out here finishing Sean O'Malley that quickly, I think he does get that big, huge fight.
You know, going back to what we were talking about earlier, if this is the last bantamweight fight for Sterling, a lot of it might have to do whether or not a title fight at 45 is the next fight if he does move up. Because, I mean, you're talking about a world of difference being a contender in a division compared to being a champion. And hard to walk away from championship money when you got to go and prove yourself as a contender.
Yeah, I have to say, though, I think Aljo's made this decision. And I don't have any knowledge, but I think the loyalty to Merab trumps everything else. And I love every bit of that. You know, not too long ago, was very anxious for the two of them to fight because I felt as though Merab had put himself in a position to earn that shot. But now I want no business of them fighting. And so for me, I actually think it makes the decision easy for Aljo. Regardless of the financial component, regardless of how it finishes, I think the decision's made. I just hope Merab actually realizes that. Because you talk about the matchup with Merab and Sandhagen, and we're not trying to get ahead of ourselves. There's some Cheeto noise that, you know, in terms of selling pay-per-view, a lot of people chopping about, you know, Sandhagen Cheeto or Sandhagen Sean O'Malley if that happens. So, but either way, I don't think we're going to see Aljo fight at 135 after tomorrow night.
We'll find out. I mean, it could be a career-defining night in a lot of ways for Aljamain Sterling because a lot of people are talking about whether or not he's the best bantamweight of all time. For me, I still lean towards Dominic Cruz. Maybe that's my nostalgia, you know, creeping in a little bit. But, I mean, how do you guys size it up? Is Aljo the greatest to do it at 35?
I mean, when you're looking at their level of work and the guys they beat in and the way they beat in him, even for Aljo, he doesn't get the credit for beating Dillashaw because Dillashaw was hurt, but it's not his fault that Dillashaw was hurt.
True.
He doesn't get the credit for beating a Peter Yan, who everybody thought was the best guy in that division, who thought he was going to be at the top for a while. In that second fight, Aljo dominated. He still won that fight and put him in those spots. And then you go out there and you beat the Olympic champion, Henry Cejudo, and he looked great in that fight. So I think that he just fought the higher level of guys.
You might have just sold me right now, honestly. Like, because you mentioned the Olympic champion part in Cejudo. You mentioned, you know, the Peter Yan factor that, you know, the first fight he was having a horrible time with Yan, and then he comes back and dominates him. Like, man, you know, Dominic Cruz isn't going to be happy to hear that. I'm thinking maybe Aljo's the best at 35, but you make a strong case.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, you're hanging out. You see Dominic more than I do, so who are you picking?
Well, you know, for me, I don't like the greatest of all-time conversations, especially when we're talking about two totally different eras. I really don't look. I know they're still both competing, but I really don't look at them as fighters from the same era, personally. But for me, Dominic Cruz is one of my brother John's best friends, but to me, it's Aljamain Sterling. A lot of it based on the activity, maybe a little bit of recency bias, but I'm saying it based on being forced to say it. To me, the greatest of all time, Belal and I have talked a lot about the greatest heavyweight of all time, where for both of us, it's Cain Velasquez. So we could go on and on, you know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's what those arguments are made for, right? Just to go back and forth. But let's go back and talk a little bit more about the main event, but this time from the standpoint of the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. You know, styles make fights. We've outlined what Aljo needs to do to walk away with his title. Now, Belal, tell me what we need to see O'Malley do to become the 8th man to wear Bantamweight gold in the UFC.
Well, he needs to take the center right away. You can't be on the edges of the cage. You can't be near the cage. If you're getting near the cage, you need to throw a knee up the middle and then get that center back. The key for him is not being against the cage because Aljo's so good at it. Even in the opening, you know, Aljo doesn't have like a GSP double leg, a perfect time double leg, or even beautiful trips. He rushes you, puts you to the cage, and he's good at locking his hands around your body. When you see him take a guy down like Cejudo, who's so good at wrestling, you're like, it's different. MMA wrestling is different than Olympic wrestling or college wrestling. And I think for Sean, if he stays in the open, that'll leave those openings for those knees up the middle or those uppercuts, because Aljamain sometimes gets a little bit desperate where you shoot in and sometimes like he stays on all fours waiting for you to make a mistake, then I'm going to rush in, you grab your leg. I think Sean just needs to be patient, smart, and keep that lead going. You got to stay in his face, keep those feints going. You're so good at playing with hands, playing with uppercuts, playing with movement. Dribble the ball against Sterling, right? You got those confidence against those lower tier guys, but I'm jumping the ball.
Right.
I still have underhooks right here if you shoot in. So those little things I think are going to play a factor for him.
You know, it's interesting as we stand here inside Hurricanes, right outside TD Garden, looking at some old footage of Sean O'Malley. Like, going back to the Contender Series, this kid has grown up to be a #1 contender before our very eyes. And, you know, it's rare for, you know, a long time in mixed martial arts, you couldn't watch these guys at 2-0, 3-0 because they were fighting in a barn somewhere in Milwaukee. You know what I mean? Now they're doing it front and center. And, man, like, we've seen a lot of the evolution of Sean O'Malley's game. I just think he has to be even better and more perfect than we've ever seen if he wants to get his hand raised tomorrow.
It has to be the perfect fight, right? And we were talking about it earlier, and it's like, it's one of those fights where 4 out of 5 times Aljamain can win this fight. Sean just needs it to be that one time, right? This is that title fight. This is your moment. So you can have the perfect camp of your life. You can have the perfect night of sleep of your life. But still, on that one night, if you don't perform, none of that other stuff matters. Sean always says, I have to sleep. I have to get my sleep right. I have to get my nutrition right. And he has that championship mentality. But still, on that one night, if you don't perform, if you don't go out there and everything clicks the way you want it to click, it's going to be a long night for you, especially with a guy like Aljamain, where all he needs is you to turn your back 1 inch. One little mistake of just grabbing your leg, just knocking you off balance, and then jumping on your back. He'll keep you the whole round, the whole 5 rounds if he wants to.
Yeah.
You know, and I think with a 5-round fight, there are certain components to it for O'Malley, because I do expect the conditioning to be there that could actually help him. His jiu-jitsu coach, Augusto Mendez, who faced Sterling back in the day, just talked about not making mistakes. And you talked about the patience earlier. For me, with O'Malley, not panicking, not making mistakes, and there might be a full round where you're down there and you don't make a mistake and you live yourself another day to get up and maybe crack him.
We'll see what happens. Let's take a look at the odds, courtesy of DraftKings Sportsbook, because this is a pretty, one-way matchup, I think, at least, when it comes to a title fight. The odds makers have it -258 for the champion, Aljamain Sterling. The comeback on the underdog, Sugar Sean O'Malley, at +210. If you want to go bet, you should go do it right now over at DraftKings Sportsbook. It is the official sports betting partner of the UFC. New customers can bet just $5 and win $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app, use the code Fight Pass, and get in on the action today. I mean, what do you think about those odds, guys? Like, odds are just what the odds makers think and how the betting, public works. But when I look at this fight, Jason, it seems like there is a little bit of bias against O'Malley and his style not being the one that is right to win a championship.
So you would expect the line to be a little closer?
Yeah, I would, at least from O'Malley, yeah.
So I guess from my standpoint, I think it's right where it needs to be. Find me a UFC fighter out there that's picking O'Malley. I haven't found many that just fully look.
Maybe it should be the other way then. Maybe we're talking about a 3-1, 4-1 favorite in Aljo.
So that's and that's where I sort of land on kind of liking where it is, right where it's at. You talk about 4 or 5 fights, that O'Malley might win 1 out of 5. I mean, I don't really know. To me, if Sean O'Malley is going to realize championship tomorrow night, it's going to be because it's a different guy than there was a year ago. And he's going to be able to do things on the ground to prevent himself from being submitted and to get it back up to where he has a chance to sort of outlast Aljo.
Yeah, let's take a look at our co-main event. We've got Zhang Wei Li defending her title against Amanda Lemos. There was that old saying that Teddy Atlas was bringing up about champions becoming infinitely better, 20 to 30% better just for winning a championship. A guy that you're familiar with, Leon Edwards, that's who he was talking about. I'm curious if you guys think that Zhang Wei Li is better off for having that first championship run, regaining her belt, and now defending it. Do you think she's different, or she learned from that first title run, you think, Belal?
I think she for sure learned from it because, she came in, she felt like she was invincible, then you get knocked out, and that changes everybody's mindset. And I think even still in the Joanna fight, she still had a little bit of that left back in the back of her mind. She wasn't the same person. She wrestled a lot more than you expected, and that's with a lot of people. Once you get knocked out, you think you have to just wrestle the next time out. So I think now the way she dominated somebody like Carla Esparza, who nobody's ever dominated like that, she finished her like that, I think now she leveled up. That's the level up now, where you're like, I'm starting to know that I belong in here with these top guys, right? MMA is kind of still brand new in China, right? So a lot of those people there, they're still trying to catch up to the people here that are born into wrestling, born into martial arts their whole life. And I think now her being at the PI, basically, anytime I'm there, I always see her there, or they're always posting videos over there. She looks like a champion that loves to learn the art of martial arts.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. You have to love this sport because it is the most demanding thing, I think, of an athlete in any other sport. You have seasons in every other sport. In MMA, there's no season. There's no downtime. If you want to, take some time off, the boss might have other plans. You got to try to, strike when the iron's hot. How much for you, Belal, where you're at in your career, is this game still, about passion and love?
Like you said, you have to live it. It's not, there's no off season to it. For me, if I'm not working out in a day, I'm thinking that I'm running behind. There's these kids nowadays that are growing up into martial arts. They started at 5. They started at 4. It's in their schools. I already started late. To me, I'm always putting in my head, I need to catch up. I need to catch up. No matter even I'm number 3 or I'm the champion of the world. Once you lose that mindset, once you lose that hunger, you're going to start dwindling your skills. You're going to start getting worse and worse. I'm watching every single fight, not as a fan. I'm watching it as, how did that work for that guy? Let me try to put it into my game. And I always have that look to me, and I always want to try new things out because I love the sport so much. And I think a lot of these athletes, a lot of these champions that don't lose, they all have that love of the sport where you're always seeing them, oh, hey, you want to get a workout? And hey, bro, hey, you're in town, let's get some work in or something like that. And Aljamain 2 weeks ago when we were in Nashville, hey, you want to spar? And I'm like, you're fighting in 2 weeks, you want to spar with me?
Right.
We never sparred before, so I don't want to take a chance of hurting you, but he loves it. He's passionate about it, and he understands that I'm passionate about it, so he sees that, and he knows that maybe working with me will give him something new. And myself, working with him, I learned a bunch of new things.
Yeah, I think about champions that have lost their belt and, fight back to, championship glory. It doesn't happen too often. Ray Longo talks a lot about that, about, especially long-standing champions. For Zhang Wei Li, she didn't have a 6-7 title defense, but for her to battle back after being at the top of the mountain once before, I think it says a lot about her character.
No question about it. And also, I think, too, Daniel Cormier has talked about Zhang Wei Li being like the best athlete he's ever seen, and he's not kidding. Like, he literally talks about that athleticism. So to me, you parlay that with the hunger that you describe, and it's just the perfect storm. And I've always talked about losses in MMA being so valuable, depending on the stage, but even Ignacio Bahamondes, Nacho, who just had a tough loss to Ludovic Klein, I think that's the best thing that could have happened to the kid. So for me, Zhang Wei Li, I just want to see her face Tatiana. I'm going to be surprised if Amanda Lemos can really put up a big test here. I think the moment's not going to be too big for Wei Li at all. I think she's rising into that stardom. And sometimes when you have fighters who don't speak English, it's tough to get to the core of the soul and really feel, there are a lot of guys that have worked really hard on their English, and then you see them come out of their shell and you can really gauge the personality. But I think Wei Li is going to reign But maybe Tatiana doesn't have something to say about that.
Yeah, what do you think about the TD Garden tomorrow night? Looking at the fans, Zhang Weili didn't necessarily like it the way she was received in Jacksonville when she fought Rose Namajunas. Is this going to be a because I mean you have an international fight here. You have China versus Brazil. Do you think the fans are going to embrace Zhang Weili and be in her corner tomorrow?
I mean, she was on a FaceTime call with Tom Brady right there, so I think that's going to play in her favor for sure.
Right.
Saying that that's his favorite athlete, and like the fans here seem like they're just fight fans, right? They seem they love it. Like you said, they're two foreign athletes, so I don't think that they're going to pick a side, but I think they're going to pick the side of Weili just because she's the champion right now, and she got Tom Brady with her.
Right. No, exactly. A fan favorite does come back tomorrow in our co-main event. Chris Weidman back in action for the first time in quite a long time, obviously coming off that really bad leg break. Man, you got to be a different kind of person to walk into the octagon and do this. You know better than anybody. But to come back after, a leg injury like that, I mean, Weidman's been saying, like, I'm going to come out and throw a leg kick. It's the first thing I'm going to do. That shows the mindset right there. Belal, do you believe him? Are we going to see Chris Weidman leg kick in the first minute of this fight?
I think so, just to get over that hump, right? When you have that, he's obviously been kicking pads. I'm assuming that he's been sparring with shin guards on, so he knows if the leg is affecting him at all. But for him, I think he wants to just get over that hump, that sense of relief. And I think even Brad Tavares seems like one of those guys that are like, all right, leg kick me, man. Let's see how it works out, right?
Yeah, you saw at the press conference, Weidman said something about that. You won't check the first one, right? And Tavares was like, throw it. And Weidman's like, all right, So I like seeing that. What he's been through over the last 2 years, Chris Weidman, and there's going to be an E60 coming out in November about this. But you saw some clips here or there, but some of the setbacks and some of the complications with that healing, with the metal rod in his leg,
right.
This is no joke. And so I'm just interested to see him out there. I'm more curious to see him bouncing around on the leg than necessarily kicking. But man, do I want to see this guy win. No disrespect to Brad Tavares, but man, I mean, the fans embraced him wholeheartedly at the press conference. I'm nervous for him. I bumped into his dad and his family, and there was some energy. Like, you could tell this is big. The magnitude was not lost in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, when you go through something like that, we're talking about passion and love for the sport and the game. Like, man, you have to love this to subject yourself to that, to go out there and find yourself and, there after coming back from an injury. Like, I mean, this is he's going to feel that forever, right? Like, I mean, his legs, healed and it's structurally repaired. But, I'm from the Midwest like you, Belal. When it gets cold, you feel every ache and pain from the last 20 years. Like, for Weidman to go out there and do it says a lot, and we'll see what happens. But I assume that TD Garden is going to be on fire when we hear him make that walk.
Bananas. And a lot of people think O'Malley's going to get the biggest pop. Maybe he will, but just wait till you hear Carolina Chris get that pop.
Carolina Chris.
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's got. That's the moniker nowadays. I mean, he's in Carolina. He's Carolina Chris. I mean, he's still got Longo and those boys in the corner, but yeah.
Yeah, I want to see Longo go visit Weidman and how Longo acts in Chris's neighborhood. Long Island in South Carolina, that's got to be something to behold, to say the least.
I'm sure.
But yeah, man. So I'm curious, how much longer you guys think we see Chris Weidman? Because obviously, a tough fight in front of him with Tavares. But this is a guy that has been to the top of the mountain. He's been knocked down a couple pegs. Suffered a bad injury. Could this possibly be Weidman's final fight?
I mean, with the way he's talking, he's still talking about title runs, right?
Right.
He knows that him against Adesanya would probably be the biggest fight in that division with his name.
I'd pay for it. I'd pay for it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, obviously. So, he knows if I get maybe 2 wins in a row, I could jump the line. The thing is, I know your body's hurting right now. Even still, even before that fight, even before that injury, he was still 2-6, right? So, he was having a rough patch. And I know that he said that was the best he's ever felt when he fought Uriah Hall. But you still got hurt. You still had to take another 2 years off. I know this weight cut probably hurt him because he weighed in, one of the last guys to weigh in. You're saying all that stuff with confidence now, but I think once he gets that win, if he gets that win, I think it'll be more of a sense of relief. All right, now I could go.
Right.
Now I'm done. I never wanted to leave out on that end, but now I can leave.
Yeah, and I think he might not know the answer to that right now, and it might take going through those 15 minutes. Vicente Luque recently coming back from the brain hemorrhaging. I think for him, I think he learned a lot in that fight last weekend, about his ability to maybe continue this. So I think he might find out in the cage, if in fact he really wants to continue this. But it would surprise me at age 39 to see some long run. after watching Robbie Lawler go out in the way he did, I would certainly love to see Weidman. I'm not saying tomorrow night necessarily, but he has a nice moment here. You know, getting back to the title, it might be one fight, it might be 2 fights. 39 years old is a real number.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But anytime Weidman makes the walk, he's must-see TV. In my book, I don't think anybody's going to be upset with him making the walk, and I'm happy to be here in Boston to see it happen. So happy to be working with you guys. This is fun. Yeah. This guy's been up since early this morning doing the weigh-in show.
And it's funny.
We're talking about fights. I have the most energy, so we're good.
But, you talk about these fighters out of camp or just, and so Belal, I'm thinking about his schedule today, right? So he gets in late last night, doing the weigh-in show today, walking around with Gerald Mershard, and I'm thinking, all right, like, this dude has to train, right? I'm like, how does, because they probably, right? So did you not train? This may be one of the first days I've known you that you haven't trained, or did you train?
No. I'm literally like messaging guys, hey, what are you doing later today? So it's like, I'm getting stuff planned out, but that's the good thing about fighters, right? Having a guy like myself where I don't have beef with a bunch of guys. I can hit up Calvin Cater, hey, let's get some training in later today. All right, cool. And, Gerald got some teammates there that hopefully we'll get some rolling rounds in. But, yeah, I just feel like
shout out Hurricane. Sorry to interrupt, but it's not like he's going to the bar. Dude's looking for a match.
Yeah. I don't hang out with guys like this because they make me feel so incredibly lazy. You know what I mean? But Belal, best of luck. We're going to hang out with you tomorrow a little bit again. Tell people about Remember the Show.
Excited about tomorrow, man. And, for all the fans watching, man, remember the show every Thursday night. It's a different style podcast. We had game shows. The fighters come on there, and they show their different personalities, right? All fighters love competition. All fighters love to win something. And when we had 2 fighters go against each other, it's the best type of show. You have me and Jason on there. The questions are hilarious. The fans start loving it. The fans start getting involved in it. So it's a great time.
Awesome. And we can see your beautiful locks of hair on that show as well.
Yeah, well, it's different. I mean, with respect, everybody has a podcast, and it's different. It's a show. It's not a podcast. It's a game show, a little bit like Jeopardy, but we have things like we take like 2 fighter faces, mesh them together, and you have to guess who it is. So Belal runs the show. A lot of fun. Hoping for a lot of opportunities down the road. We like taking it on the road, but pleasure to be here with you. Appreciate you, man.
Now you're going to have to show me around Boston before this weekend's over, too.
Absolutely.
So, awesome. Jason Anik, Belal Muhammad, check him out. Remember the show. Also, check us out tomorrow for more extra rounds. On the way out here, want to let you know about the shirt that I'm wearing. It is the UFC Loves Hawaii. Obviously, the people of Maui are experiencing an unprecedented crisis that has claimed lives, destroyed homes, and devastated cities. The people of Maui are facing a long road to rebuild their lives, and they need our help to raise money for relief efforts. The UFC is offering this limited edition UFC Loves Hawaii t-shirt for sale. It is on sale right now at UFCstore.com. 100% of the profits go to Hawaiian relief efforts. All right, that is it for us. It's Extra Rounds. We'll be back tomorrow as we get ready for UFC 292, going down in the shadow right here of Hurricanes at the Garden, and can't wait for it. We'll see you then. For Jason and Belal, I'm TJ DeSantis. We'll see you next time for more Extra Rounds right here on UFC Fight Pass.